Hi, everybody. Welcome to Everhome's weekly broadcast on real estate trends. My name is Lee Honish. I am a professional marketer, and I'm joined as always by broker owner David Bartels. How are you today, David?
I am doing fantastic now that I've got some warm clothes on. It's freezing over here.
Yeah, I completely understand. It's going to be all of like 60 degrees today, so I'm sure quite frigid while the rest of the country actually experiences.
yeah. Here we're complaining about 60s, right?
Yeah, I think we're in San Diego. I think it drops to 68 today. So yeah, it's going to be a difficult day for me.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Yeah, I'm going to try. I was thinking about a walk around the local lake, but you know, with the way the weather is, I'm a little frightened by it. Those of you who don't know, this show is brought to you by Everhome. List your home with one low set fee. List your home like a realtor. Go to everhome.io, everhome.io. That's Everhome for every home. Follow us both on social media. I'm at Lee Honish Marketing, and he is at David Bartels. Don't forget the S. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions, feedback, comments, concerns. With that said, we're going to get right into it because this week yesterday was a big deal in the world of real estate. The foreclosure ban and mortgage forbearance has been extended through June. For a second time since President Biden took office, his administration has extended the foreclosure ban. It was announced on Tuesday. This includes a foreclosure moratorium through June 30th and extending mortgage payment forbearance enrollment until June 30th. All right, let's get into this, David. Are you surprised at all?
I'm not surprised, but I'm concerned because we're just kicking the can down the road. But no, I'm not surprised at all, and I wouldn't be surprised if you told me 4 or 5 months from now that they're going to extend it till the end of the year. So we'll see.
All right, well, it's creating a bigger problem now. And we've talked about this with loan modifications during the fall of that particular market, where banks started loan modifications and sort of spreader theory of pushing things back. And so let's talk about this. There are definitely millions of people who, even if they got employed immediately, wouldn't be able to catch up on these payments with banks literally ready to snap their fingers. So there is no out to this except creating greater debt. And I can't believe that at least the big three, Wells, Chase, and B of A, can be happy about this.
Well, first of all, this only applies to government loans, right?
Right.
So it doesn't really apply to everybody. So it's only those loans that are owned by Fannie and Freddie. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. So it's not going to really apply to everybody. But generally speaking, we've seen that what goes for Fannie and Freddie is applying to the rest of the mortgage industry, even though it's not legally required to do that. So listen, I'm not worried about homeowners being able to make up all those back payments, but because I think these banks are going to be very liberal and putting them back, either doing a forbearance and what we knew traditionally as a forbearance, taking those missed payments and moving them to the back of the loan, either by extending the loan by the number of months that they skipped, or by creating a balloon payment that's due, on the final payment of their loan. I think they're going to be pretty liberal with loan modifications as well, assuming that people can demonstrate the ability to repay. And even if they don't, they're likely to put them on a loan mod, then foreclose if they don't get back on the payment train for them. So none of that really surprises me. I think that you're going to see foreclosures starts go. We talk about this almost every week now. I think that foreclosure starts are going to go way up, but I don't think that's going to result in a whole bunch of foreclosures, and it's definitely not going to impact home values. It's not going to even make any kind of dent in home values.
I would agree with that. I think it would take a lot more to affect home values. And the last time we said that, the United States responded with a crisis the last time we said that out loud. But let's talk about this. There are more than 1 million Americans that are unemployed at this moment. We're getting ready for another stimulus round. So let's talk about the unemployment issue, coupled with 2.7 million homeowners currently in a forbearance on the 11 million backed. Okay, a million people. These aren't small numbers we're tossing around. This is a very serious thing that I'm not sure that we can spend our way out of this problem. Like at some day, this all comes due somehow.
Oh no, it's gonna be a mess. Okay, first of all, that's not 1 million people that are unemployed. That's 1 million people filing for unemployment every week, right?
I apologize.
So I don't know how many total millions that is. And I'm not even sure anybody else knows, because once you get past, I'm not sure, it's 6 months or so, and you're still unemployed after filing for unemployment, you just fall off as people that can't find work. So it's really hard to calculate what the estimated number of actual unemployed people are. We do know about 2.7 million people are in forbearance right now. That number is probably coming down. More and more people are getting back to work. Consumer confidence is growing. You're hearing things like the beginning stages of herd immunity, opening up vaccinations, COVID vaccinations to those people who want it. I was watching, I had an interesting evening last night. I watched both Biden's town hall meeting on CNN, which is based on current times, and then I watched an episode of House of Cards, and the juxtaposition of those two things was really interesting to me, because what was happening, and this is directly to your point actually, is that on one hand they're saying they're pushing for this $1.9 trillion package, and on the other hand we're talking about how to pay for it, right? And so I'm over watching House of Cards, which is fictitious, I guess, and it's fiction, though it's reportedly based on Clinton, the Clintons. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard. But basically what they're talking about in that episode is talking about, we need to get people back to work, and it's going to be really expensive to be able to do that. And so the only way that we're going to be able to do that is by cutting entitlements. There's going to have to be some pain, and everyone's going to have to do their part, kind of thing. And I think that reckoning is coming to us at some point. I don't know when, and I don't know how. I don't know. It's one of those, is it too soon to talk about that? It's one of those jokes. Was that too soon? But sooner or later, they're going to have to start talking about some of these entitlements, these specific industry entitlements. I'm sure that some people are looking at Medicare and Social Security as an entitlement. Hopefully, I hope they decide to tighten up some of the corporate loopholes that some of these special interests have, that keep them from paying billions or even trillions of dollars in taxes every single year, and it doesn't really come off the backs of retired people or working class people. But we'll see how they play it. It's going to be good TV.
Well, let's talk about that a little further. In the announcement, the administration pushed Congress to pass a $1.9 trillion stimulus package in this round. So Alexander, Senator? She's Senator. Is it Congresswoman? Alexander Ocasio?
Congress.
Cortez. Yeah. She had proposed a very large plan. And at the time, 60 Minutes really grilled her of, how are you going to pay for this, medical and food for all thing? And it was $1 trillion plan at the time she brought it up. And she she was really upset that she was being grilled on the concept of, where are we getting the money for this? And her attitude was, the same place we've been getting the money from, which is out of space. Literally, we just write checks and not really
Right.
think about where it's coming from.
Right.
And she was put off by that because normally most people don't get asked. And honestly, Biden's not getting asked about where are you getting the 1.9 trillion from?
Yeah, no one's asking that question. That's my whole point, is that it's too soon to ask where it's coming from because everybody just wants relief. People are hurting. Listen, my family's been very fortunate. I'm in the real estate business, which is just, been a rocket ship. Okay. My wife is in the stock market business, which has just been a rocket ship. So we haven't personally experienced some of the pain that a lot of Americans are feeling, financially, as a result of COVID ban. So I'm not sure that I have the right perspective, but I do know in watching the news shows, the one thing that Republicans, Democrats did, at least early on, seem to agree on was that people needed help and we needed to do something big and bold in order to assist people and transition them, to the end of this crisis so people can get back to work. There is a disagreement now on the size of the package. Republicans are now, which is what their platform traditionally has been, are starting to squawk a little bit about how we're going to pay for it. It's too much. We don't need to, too many entitlements. Something's got to give. We can't just keep writing checks. And Democrats keep thinking that, well, this is something that we need to do. We'll figure out how to pay for it, later. And I'm not sure which camp is right, and I'm certainly not advocating one over the other. But I am saying that people are starting to think about it. And this is the debt that we've, I understand it's approaching $4 trillion of money that we mostly didn't have in the bank, which means that we've got to print money, which increases inflation, which is good for housing and it's good for the stock market, moderate inflation. But it's not necessarily good for consumers. So unless you get wages. And so now you see this push for a higher wages, and I think that what they hope is that if employers will pay more to employees will spend more money, and that'll start to that will increase taxes across the board for not only the federal, state, and local governments. That'll help pay for all this fun. But at the end of the day, there's going to have to be some cuts. And it's not going to be very pleasant when that happens.
Let's play devil's advocate here, David. What is the doomsday scenario to this?
The doomsday scenario to paying all the money?
The push off to pay Peter to rob Paul.
The doomsday scenario is that the United States ends up, I don't think they're ever going to go bankrupt. I mean, they own the U.S. Mint, right?
Right.
They will just print more money. They'll borrow the money from China and that kind of thing. But the amount of money that we spend on debt is really unbelievable. And so when you really look at the numbers, I don't think anybody really pays any attention to it because I don't know how it reckons, but sooner or later, what if Social Security runs out of money? What if Medicare runs out of money? What if Fannie Mae crashes or Freddie, crash again? Those are the things that you worry about. And we end up having to go on an austerity program. You worry about the elderly people who aren't really in a position to take care of themselves and rely on their Social Security in order to just survive, week to week. So it can be a pretty scary scenario. I don't think that it's scary for you and I in our lifetime at our advanced age.
Right.
But our kids and our grandkids can certainly are certainly going to be stuck with this tab unless we do something else. I think that as long as we can balance the budget and not get further behind, and kind of chip away at it, I think that we're okay. I just worry about it growing. I don't worry a lot about it shrinking. I just worry about it getting worse. I feel the same way about climate change. You don't have to reverse it, but you do got to keep it from expanding.
I would agree with all of that. I think my greatest fear, having worked in a bank and looking at situations like this, is always the same thing. Can the dollar actually collapse at some point? Can it just be crushed under its own weight? Or can we keep printing and keeping our way out of this issue?
No, it can. I mean, at the end of the day, the value of the dollar versus the value of currency of countries from around the world have a massive impact on our ability to do business around the world. So when you think about what a dollar buys, it makes a big difference. I mean, if you want to, look at Venezuela, as an example. So if you think about, they had inflation that was running, 4,000 or 5,000 times, a year, in terms of growth. And, the United States is looking for somewhere in the 3% range a year to give it a little perspective. So we like a little inflation, like 3%. But when you get hyperinflation, like you're seeing in Venezuela, it basically makes the value of the bolivar worthless. And, $100 of US dollars, $100 makes you very wealthy in Venezuela, and a million bolivar is really almost worthless. You can barely, buy a week's worth of groceries with it. So you want to be careful, because that's really what happens. It's not really the value of a dollar inside the United States. It's really the value of a dollar outside the United States. And if you think about the valuations of these companies and their ability to do business all around the world, it has a massive impact on their success. And that is when you talk about trickle down economy, that's really what you're thinking about, the taxes that these companies pay on their profits to the U.S. government. And I think ultimately you create the case for them just to eliminate all those, special interest loopholes. How a company like Verizon or AT&T can make $5 billion and not pay any taxes is a little mind-boggling, right? How, the subsidies to oil companies and farmers and those kind of things are designed. So if the dollar crashes, then the U.S. has to subsidize these businesses in order to compete, and that kind of defeats the purpose too. So it's a difficult balance. I think, for me, eliminate all the special interest. My company should pay the same taxes from a percentage of profit as Verizon does, period. Okay, if I've got to pay 20% of my earnings in taxes, why doesn't Verizon have to do that as well? What do I know? That's just my question.
It's a fair question.
That's the questions that I get to ask.
No.
If I didn't have any taxes, I'd expand rapidly too and employ a lot of jobs, but nobody cares about my 30 jobs.
Well, once the corporation rolls out, David, and you're the hottest thing on the market, then we'll have that discussion. All right, I'm going to go with the positive end, because I tend to be a little more gloom and doomish as a former asset manager. I'm going to go positive. In 2010, the federal government, to stop the bottoming of real estate, rolled out this extraordinary plan of taking REOs and turning them into rentals that ultimately became commodities, right? Traded and sold by these large firms, eliminating the REO market for real estate agents, but stopping the bottom to the crash. They took all these things out the back door. They turned them into rentals. They helped people out. The companies that funded those got the opportunity to ultimately, right, because they were federally backed, they got the inside track, et cetera, et cetera. They ultimately got to own them and turn them into long-term rentals as commodities for their investors. Great, it worked, and we saw a turnaround from 2010 forward because of this plan. Is there a magic pill to fix all of this? Sort of in that same vein.
Well, I gave up dreaming for magic pills a long time ago for anything. It all requires a lot of hard work and a little good luck, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
So So I don't know. I mean, I was reading an article yesterday where some of these big investment firms are swooping in on,
Of course.
on New York, trying these bulk buyers looking to buy up some of that, those assets in there in bulk at a steep discount.
Yeah.
So that's really, that's what we're seeing some of that. I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know if they're going to be able, to do that. It's really hard to say. It depends. The stuff isn't controlled by banks who want to just package up, offload it, write it off and move on to, the next deal. It's hard they're going to individual, owners of these commercial and multifamily assets and saying, hey, we want to buy your stuff, all of your stuff at a big discount. And I'm not sure there's really any value to that. I don't know that they're hurting so bad that they need to do that versus, just sell them as individual assets based on the highest and best use to the highest bidder.
The one thing I saw through this cycle that was most interesting, if we're considering this a real estate in terms of real estate cycle, previously during these usual 10-year gaps, which is what we're on, we got more small banks. We had, the Wachovias of the world, the IndyMacs of the world, the Crocker Banks of the world. We are now at three major powerhouses who basically control the industry. Will that ultimately make everything a little bit easier?
I don't, I think that the idea that there's going to be an easy way out of this, I think is wrong. I don't think that there's, I think that you're going to see a lot of ideas. I think you're going to see a lot of attempts. I think that people are going to try to profit on this, but it's because they have visions of 2008. But I don't think that those opportunities are going to be around like they were in 2000. I just don't. I think that the assets that people are trying to buy it's different. First of all, the assets are not going to be controlled by the banks this time around because they don't need bank approval because they're not short sales. And because these asset owners have equity, they're looking to maximize the return of value on that asset. They're not, I don't need to sell it in 30 days. I could sell it in 90 days and get all my money instead of sell it now and get most of my money. And so I don't think that these opportunities are going to be the same. And I think that the way out for the people who are in distress and the people who are trying to benefit from that distress are going to be able to repeat what happened in 2000, what began in 2008 and really took off in 2011 when they started buying everything in sight.
Well, because I wanted to be the czar of real estate in the previous market, David, I'm going to throw out my czar plan and let you punch holes in it. I am going to do what they did in 2007 and 8. I'm going to bring all three of the banks in, and they're going to borrow a large sum of money, and they're going to pay off the back debt, and it's going to be borrowed by the three major banks, and they will pay it back with interest, a la 2008 all over again. What do you think?
You might. I mean, that's entirely possible. I think it's, if they need to do that, I think that's more likely that the Fed is going to backstop these banks. So that they're not hurt. But I still don't know how many assets they're going to buy, but they may give them, if they need it, because they've set aside sufficient capital in order to, the reserves that they need in order to get through this, which is one of the results of 2008, in Dodd-Frank. So, and the Fed may be willing to step in and provide some short-term liquidity. That's what they're doing with zero interest rates now anyway. So these banks are borrowing at those zero interest rates in order to backstop whatever cash flow challenges that they might be having. Whether or not they're going to be able to use that cash in order to buy distressed assets, I don't know. Or to help their clients buy distressed assets, I don't know. The question is, are distressed assets going to be available for sale at a discount or not? And right now, we don't see that much sign of that. But I have to admit, I'm not spending much time looking at the commercial side of the business. So that if it were going to happen, that's where it would happen. I don't see it happening on the residences, and I'm thinking single family units, 1 to 4 doors. That's what I'm thinking.
The wacky Swiss have changed their paper purchasing into commercial. There's a little shout out for the previous market, the wacky Swiss. Hey everyone, list your home online for one low set fee. Experience the Everhome way and discover the benefits risk-free. They sponsor this show. They bring you, both David and I, each and every week to bring you real estate trends. Go check out the website, explore Everhome's easy listing service, pay one low set fee, and find out how to list your home like a realtor. Go to everhome.io. That's www.everhome.io. That's Everhome for every home. Again, as I said earlier, my name is Lee Honish, and that is David Bartels. The show is sponsored by Everhome. Follow us, please. I'm at Lee Honish Marketing, and he's at David Bartels. Check out our sponsors page on social media. It's Everhome.io. We thank you all for listening.